So let's go ahead and get started. Without further ado, I will hand it over to you, Mr. Jun Moy.
Welcome, everybody. It's, well, I was going to say nice to see you, but actually I don't see you, but I'm sure there are plenty of people out there in the virtual audience. So, welcome to the third installment in our webinar series. Let me do a little screen share here. Make sure my technology is working okay. All right, I think this should be all right.
Looks great.
Great. All right, so yeah, I'm going to be relying on Jason a little bit for my only bit of feedback. So, so once again, my name is Jun Moy. I'm the branch director here in Cupertino, up in Northern California. And today we'll be discussing the new role of standardized testing in college admissions. And hopefully I can shine a light, a different light, and provide a little bit of a perspective on how the exams are being evaluated and used in admissions these days. Okay. All right, so a little something about me. So I've been the branch director here at Elite for a while now, at various branches, both down in Southern California as well as Northern California. I started my directing career running the Northridge branch, which is in the Valley area down in LA. I eventually ran the Rowland Heights branch, which was the headquarters branch at the time. And then a few years later, I had the fortune of coming up to the Bay Area to open up one of the first Northern California branches up here in Cupertino, and I've been here ever since. Okay, and I am currently still here at the Cupertino branch. So I've been involved at Elite since the year 2000. That was many moons ago and many strands of hair ago and many pounds ago. So I've been here for a while. I was in the middle of grad school and was a teacher, and then took on more and more roles at Elite, and here we are 20 years later, and running a school and helping students get into the schools of their dreams. Okay. And I've worked in different capacities at Elite over the last 20 plus years as well. I've been a teacher, I've been an administrator, I've been a counselor. I've worked on college admissions essays. I've helped create curriculum for the SAT and ACT as well. So I've kind of run the gamut in terms of wearing different hats. So I've had the fortune and the privilege of working with thousands of students over the last 20 plus years. And a little something more personal about myself. I do have 2 young sons at home who occupy 99.9% of my non-working time. They're finishing 2nd and 4th grade. So needless to say, I've got quite a bit of years ahead of me before they get into college. Okay. All right, so let's paint the scenario here. So we've got a nice vehicle here, a nice Tesla, which I'm sure many of you aspire to have. Many of you already have one. So let's imagine this scenario here. Okay. Let's say you're in the market for a Tesla Model 3. Okay. You see something online, and it's advertised to be $30,000 only, slightly used. Okay, whatever slightly used means. Well, I don't know about you, but $30,000 may sound like a good deal for a Tesla. And by the way, I think Model 3s run for around 50,000, give or take. I think the lower models aren't even offered anymore. So about 50,000 plus is what they run for. So 30,000 sounds like a pretty good deal. Is it a good deal? Well, it kind of depends on the situation, doesn't it? What if now you know that it's 150,000 miles on it? Okay, that may change your perspective whether it's a good deal or not. You may wonder, well, what model year is it? I think the Model 3s came out in 2017 or 18. It's a lot of miles for a few years. Has it had basic maintenance? Has it had tire rotations, brake system flushes, AC service? Is it the standard or the long range model? Has it been in a crash before? The point is, context matters. You can't just look at one number or one piece of information and draw solid conclusions about the deal, about the situation. And it's really no different for college students or for high school students trying to get into college. You can't just look at one piece of data or one element of their profile and draw hard conclusions about it. You need as many different pieces of information as possible. All right, so let's talk about the purpose of test scores here. Okay. So the purpose of a test score is to help supplement an academic profile. It provides context and extra numerical information. And in this new modern age, this new age of big data, another data point is always useful. So let me kind of clarify that a little bit. Let's say you're a student who goes to maybe a not so competitive high school. It's no one's fault. It is what it is. It's where your parents happen to set up shop and live and buy a home, and that's where you go to high school. Okay. Let's say you've got a great GPA at this high school. Maybe you got like a 3.95 unweighted, maybe like a 4.46 weighted. Great numbers. But an admissions officer may know your school and wonder, is this just a case of a big fish in a little pond? Or is this like a legitimate GPA? Like the student actually is that talented? Well, a good test score could help further verify or confirm an already strong profile. Okay, that way you're not just, hey, I'm achieving these numbers in a shallow pool. Like, if you take a national standardized exam, whether you live in Topeka, Kansas, or Boise, Idaho, or Columbus, Ohio, or here, the scores all have the same value. Okay, so it could help further confirm or verify an already strong profile. Or it could add another dimension to a seemingly weak profile. Maybe you go to a really tough high school, which a lot of high schools here in the Bay tend to be, and down in LA as well. You go to a tough high school and the competition is stiff, and it's hard to achieve a really strong GPA. Then a strong test score could kind of help offset that to some degree, not completely, but to some degree. So it could help compensate for and offset other weak areas. Essentially, what you want, if you have a weaker profile and you have a good test score, you want to invite closer inspection and evaluation of the student profile. Okay, so test serves a lot of different purposes. All right, so let's go to the SAT and ACT, which are the primary general exams. Okay, so what's the purpose of these exams, or rather, what are they trying to measure? Well, they're supposed to measure and gauge your critical reading and analysis skills, your problem-solving skills, higher order thinking, as you probably already know from your kids or from your parents, from your friends who have kids in high school. The questions are seldom straight knowledge questions, straight regurgitation of facts. It's more like application of facts, application of knowledge, application of skills. You know this rules, you know this fact, you have this piece of knowledge, you've memorized it, but can you apply it in the right situation under time pressure at the right time, in the right context? The test also measures your focus and concentration under time conditions. Working and operating and excelling and performing under time pressure is part of success as well. And finally, the last bullet point here, it gauges your attention to details over a length of time. This is one of my favorite points to emphasize with a lot of my students here. It measures, to some degree, it does try to measure your meticulousness, how careful and how meticulous you are about fine details. And I think most of us would agree that one of the trademarks, one of the qualities of a strong student is you can catch nuances, you can catch details, you pay attention to details. So your ability to catch details and concentrating over a long length of time, that's one of the intangibles that they're trying to measure as well. Okay. Now, with all that being said, I want to emphasize that not everyone tests well. Okay. Tests have their flaws. If it's man-made, it's got flaws. It's right. It's vulnerable. Some people are not good at time management. Some aren't so good at speed and pacing. Some don't work so well under pressure, under time pressure. There are 3 types of students that I generalize as not testing as well as they could. They may be objectively pretty bright and pretty intuitive, but for whatever reason, they don't quite perform and score as high as they're capable of, as they should. Okay? The first type is abstract thinkers. Okay, so and I meet a lot of these students locally here. A student could be very bright, very intuitive, but they think on a higher order that's not captured by the exam. They make connections between concepts and ideas that are seemingly incongruous and unrelated. No one really sees the direct line and connection between those two concepts and ideas, but they see it. Those big picture thinkers, those abstract thinkers, they don't live down in the details, the minutia of things. Those thinkers, those students tend to slightly underperform what they're capable of. They'll probably get a good score still, but the test is about details as well. So I think that's one type of student that tends to not score as well as they could. Another type is methodical readers and thinkers. You're deliberate, you're methodical. Some people call it slow, whatever you want to call it, but they're just very careful and methodical about the way they process information and absorb data. I think these students also tend to underperform relative to their abilities. The third type I would classify as nervous Nellies, and you probably have heard this term before. People who are a little over anxious, who psych themselves out, who maybe wilt a little bit under to time pressure, either the time pressure or just the pressure of being on the big stage. It's like, you train for 4 years to go to the Olympics, and your event's 30 to 45 seconds long. And when it comes to your turn and your event after 4 years of training, for whatever reason, you just didn't perform on the big stage. Well, some people don't perform well when the brights are extra, and the lights are extra bright. So nervous Nellies, I think, kind of psych themselves out and underperform as well. So broadly speaking, these are the three types of students that I generally say they could score better. Actually, they are better. They just don't score as well as they could. Okay. All right, so let's talk about testing policies at different institutions, different universities and colleges. Okay. All right, so let's talk about test optional versus test blind. I'm sure everyone already knows the difference, but let's clarify just in case. So test optional means if you have a test score, okay, good or bad, if you have a test score, you may submit it and they will look at it. Okay. If you don't have a test score and you apply to a test optional school, they are still legally obligated to still look at your application and your profile. So treat it as extra credit. If you have a test score and submit it, they'll look at it. If you don't have it, no problem. We'll just evaluate everything without it. Test blind means they're blind. They are not going to look at your test scores. Even if you have it, even if you submit it, it will not be forwarded to the admissions department. It may be used in another capacity, but it won't be used for admissions purposes. Okay, so blind, don't look at it at all, versus optional, extra credit if you have it. Okay, the UCs have already said that they're going to be test blind through the 2024 admissions year. So most of you probably have already read the recent news. I think it came out Friday evening. I think I was eating dinner. I was slurping my ramen dinner, and then I saw the updates on my phone. The UCs have made it final and official that they are going to stop fighting the injunction, the loss. They're going to stop their lawsuit to fight the injunction. Long story short, the UCs will indeed stay test blind through the 2024 admissions year. So I think that means if you are a freshman or older, you will, and when you apply to the UCs, they will not look at your test scores. It will be test blind. Now, honestly, test blind is kind of a radical policy. No other major university, excuse me, US university besides Caltech and the UCs is test blind. There's a smattering of other schools that you probably have never heard of. Actually, I have never even heard of too many of those schools, but very few notable schools are test blind. Okay, there's a whole bunch of test optional schools though. COVID has altered the college admissions landscape for sure. So if you are a current 11th or 12th grader, okay, if you're current junior or senior, well, seniors, it doesn't matter because you're already done with your admission season. But if you're a current junior or senior, you probably have been facing mostly test optional policies. I don't think too many schools, if any, require the test because most people weren't even able to successfully get a testing site. If you're a 10th grader or below, it's kind of hard to predict what the future test policies are going to be because a lot of the schools are doing this on a year-by-year, season-by-season basis. Some schools have already announced we're going to be test optional for the next 2-3 years. That means 10th graders are included. Others have said, okay, we'll extend test optional for one more season. We'll play it by ear next school year. So there's no universal policy for 10th graders and younger. Okay. My post-COVID prediction, and not just mine, I think most college counselors would agree that most top schools are going to remain test optional, most likely. I'll be discussing that at length here in a few minutes. Okay, so I think most top schools are going to remain test optional. Now, with that being said, there are a lot of different ways that we think that the test could be utilized in the future, okay, in the test optional environment or atmosphere. It could be used as a tiebreaker among students with similar credentials and profiles. Okay, if I've got 8, 9, 10 students who all look very similar GPAs, similar transcripts, maybe even similar extracurricular activities. Their essays, of course, are subjective, but after they were given their numerical ranking or grade and assessments, these 10 students look more or less the same. Well, test scores, if they're optional, could be used as a tiebreaker, okay, to distinguish between them. Case in point, University of Washington, UW, as we say, okay, very popular among our NorCal students up here. University of Washington said that and UW is a test optional school, okay? UW said, it's clear on their website, if you submit your test scores, okay, if you show us your test scores and you happen to fall above the middle 50% of our typical freshman profile, because remember, they had data for tests over the last 4 or 5 years, okay, over the last many years before COVID hit. So if you happen to be above the middle 50% of our profile, we will use it. We could use it, may use it, which probably means they will. They may use it for consideration purposes before they make waitlist decisions. That's just a long way of saying it's a tiebreaker, okay? But it will only be used as a factor if you're above the middle 50%. Remember back in the statistics class, the bell curve? The middle 50% is like the fattest middle portion of the bell curve. So that goes from the 25th to the 75th percentile, right? 25th to 75th is the middle 50%. So if your scores happen to be at or above the 75th percentile, they may use it as a consideration before they make waitlist decisions. That means tiebreaker. So it could give you an admissions letter without going to a waitlist. Okay. And then speaking of waitlists, it could be a way to distinguish and rank students on the waitlist. Now, officially, at the vast majority of the universities, they say, oh, we don't rank our waitlist students. I don't know if I fully believe that, but the official literature, the official message to everybody is the waitlists are random. If you're qualified to be on the waitlist, then you're just as qualified as, the first person versus the 8th person. It's random. I don't know if I fully believe that, but supposedly they're random. But in the future, I could see, if you submit a test score, that could distinguish between waitlist people. That could be a way to kind of break the tie for waitlist as well. Okay, so those are different ways that the test could be utilized in the future. All right, this is an important slide. Let's talk about this more carefully. So there's a whole business side, okay, the whole business side to being test optional. So top schools, especially Ivy ones, they've all publicly stated that test optional policies are temporary due to COVID. Okay, COVID's thrown a wrench, in the works for scheduling and taking your tests. So they know that a lot of students are unable to take their exams. Maybe their site got closed. Maybe it got postponed. Maybe it got rescheduled. Maybe they reduced the capacity of the test site and they're only taking 30% of the normal students and everyone else had to reschedule. So they said, okay, we understand that you're facing obstacles getting a test site, so we're going to make it test optional. So officially, mostly Ivies have said it's going to be a temporary thing. And they made it very clear. It's a temporary policy. Okay? But test optional brings about a lot of financial and various advantages to the schools. If a school is test optional, it could lull a student, or a family rather, into thinking, hey, my kid's got a chance at the school. You know, his or her lower test scores were not competitive for school X, but in the absence of test scores, they don't see that weakness. So I think my kid has a chance now. That invites more applications. More applications means more application money, and it brings more attraction and attention to the campus. That's a good thing, right? They want more applications. More applications means a bigger candidate pool. Bigger candidate pool means lower admissions rate. Let me dwell on this for a little bit here. So a school, public or private, they generally have X number of spots for their freshman class, okay? That number, that capacity grows at a snail's pace. In order for them to take more students, to be able to absorb and handle more students, they've got to build more dorms. That takes time, it takes money. Or they got to build more apartments, private apartments, okay, that the school can regulate and manage. They've got to have enough classrooms. They've got to hire enough professors and speakers and adjunct professors in order to handle the infrastructure and the volume of students. So there's a lot of things the school has to do to take more students. So a bigger candidate pool doesn't mean a bigger freshman class. A bigger candidate pool actually just means more rejections. More candidates actually means more, likely means more unqualified applicants applying. Okay? And these are all good things to the university. They're in the business of coming across as selective. They're in the business of looking good. So they want to attract as many people as possible, qualified or unqualified, and then it artificially lowers their admissions rate. Okay. So remember, the admissions, the number of freshmen that they can take is growing slower than the number of new applicants coming in. And of course, that helps boost national rankings. And, you know, I tell my counseling students this all the time. Colleges are vain. They're vain. Whether they admit it or not, they all care about national rankings. Oh, some of them give, you know, they pay good lip service and they say, oh, we don't care about our rankings. And, you know, we just want to do the best we can and build the future and train the next generation of future leaders, which is probably true at a lot of schools. But secretly, they care about their national rankings. They're vain. So anything to boost their national rankings, they will do. It also allows, test optional, also allows them to selectively portray or boast certain statistics. For instance, Duke University said they very proudly boasted 44% of our apps this year, and Duke is test optional, by the way, 44% of our applications this year, they had no test scores. They submitted it without test scores. Of course, they only showed that statistic. They strategically chose to not reveal what percentage of the no test score apps actually got in versus what percentage of the with test score apps got in. They don't reveal that. That you have to dig into the data and infer and calculate on your own. Sorry, I didn't go through that process. But there's a reason why they didn't put that statistic on there. They're going to show what they want to show. Okay. So there's a lot of benefits to test optional policy. So I see this policy likely to remain intact for the foreseeable future. Okay. There's a whole business to being test optional. Schools love it. All right, so there's some revealing Freudian slips, revealing quotes that some admissions officers mentioned and slipped when they were doing interviews recently. So this is an admissions officer, admissions official from a college. He or she, I don't remember he or she said, we saw people that thought, oh, I would never get into the school, thinking, oh, if they're not looking at a test score, maybe I actually have a chance. If you read between the lines, that they're basically saying, this guy or girl, this woman, this man or woman is basically saying, we just invited a bunch of unqualified people to apply. That's a good thing from their perspective. Okay, they actually have a chance, right? It's implied that these students they never really had a chance, but the no test optional policy made them think that. So who said this? Cornell University's Vice Provost of Enrollment said this in a New York Times article, February 2021. You read between the lines and you can tell they wanted more unqualified students to apply. Okay, but they really were not qualified. More people applying, less qualified. Here's another quote. You might find more students applying to an Ivy League or a school like ours because they feel like they now have a chance, now that test scores are optional. Again, from the tone, you can read and infer and understand, oh, these students actually don't have a chance. See, now they have a chance. They didn't really have a chance. Who said this? NYU's Vice President of Enrollment said this at a CNN interview in March of 2021. So these are what I would consider Freudian slips. You know, they're revealing, they're tipping their hand at what their true intentions are. It's like, oh, you don't really have a chance at getting into our school, but we'll make you think that you do, and then you'll spend the $85 or $100 or $120 to apply, and then we'll just, you know, turn you down afterwards, and then we get our lower admissions rate as a result. All right, so that's a lot of information. So the test scores, what's the verdict here? Well, at test optional colleges, scores likely still do matter. Can you get in without a test score? Yeah, I think you definitely can. There's definitely lots of different ways that you can show strength on your resume. Okay, but in general, keep in mind, the rarer any talent or quality, the more valuable it is in the admissions process. Okay, maybe you're one of only 3 people to play squash, you know, in your local region. You have a special talent. I don't know, you play harp. I don't know too many people who play harp, right? You're nationally ranked in a sport, or you know, you're a gold medal division winner in some science Olympiad. Okay, the more rare your talent or quality, the more valuable it is. High test scores are rare. Okay? At least from a national perspective, they are. So they will be valued if you can achieve them. So if you can get good scores, I think they're well worth submitting, applying for, and turning in. Okay. I want to emphasize though, test scores do matter, or they can matter, but they're not the be all end all. It's not the panacea for poor grades, right? It's not going to overturn everything, but it can bring another dimension and shine a different light on your resume. Okay. All right. So before we were talking about the general exams, SAT, ACT, let's talk about other standardized exams. So first, we'll talk about the subject tests. As you probably know, subject tests were eliminated in January of 2021, just earlier this year, about 4 months ago. Subject tests have been around for a while. I think back when I took them many years ago, back in the 80s, they were called the achievement tests. Then the next iteration of them was called the SAT-2s, which is a common name that a lot of people still use. Then they were switched over to SAT subject tests. Okay, so these tests have been around for decades. They finally got eliminated in 2021, early 2021, because really fewer and fewer people were taking them. Really only the most competitive students were taking them, which is a relatively small subsect of the high school pool. And there was just too much overlap with AP exams. They're not identical, but they're similar to the AP exams. So they figured it's better to invest our time and resources towards developing APs and the SATs rather than on the small minority exam, supplemental exam that fewer and fewer people were taking. Okay. Now, if you were among the lucky few who was able to take the subject test before this whole hoo-ha happened with the pandemic, your scores can still be submitted and used if the colleges you're applying to are test optional. So whatever policy your university has for the general exam, meaning SAT, ACT, they will carry on the same policy for subject tests if you have them. It's just that they were eliminated starting this year. Maybe you took a test like a year or a year and a half ago. They will still look at it if it's a test optional school. All right, so then if those are gone, then what else can we take? What else can your kid take? Well, they can take AP exams. Now, a little perspective about the APs. Previously, APs really used more for college credit rather than college admissions. Okay, for the longest time, they weren't used at all for admissions. Really, it was just to demonstrate mastery of a subject content, not general thinking, problem-solving, academic skills. It's how well do you know your physics? How well do you know your chemistry? Well do you know literature or Lang or Spanish or Latin or whatever? Right? It's mastery of a subject. So if there's no SAT, ACT, right, then everything else is going to take on more weight. So if you're applying to a test blind school like the UCs, okay, like Caltech for the next few years, there's no SAT, ACT, and subject tests are not counted, then APs are going to take on considerably more weight. So your GPAs, meaning weighted and unweighted, your extracurricular activities, and of course your APs. These all will take on proportionally more weight to make up for the void that SAT and ACT just vacated. Okay. So how many APs would be considered good? Okay. And I hesitate a little bit with my next slide because I know that parents and students sometimes they really like attach themselves to these numbers. These are just suggestions. Okay. How many APs would be good to take? Well, my recommendation from my experiences, first of all, try to get 4s and 5s. Most major universities, all major universities, if you get a 4 or a 5, you'll probably get some kind of credit. But if you get a 3 on an AP, you're that will much less likely translate to some kind of college credit. So strive to get 4s and 5s. So those are most likely to translate to credit. For the lower UCs, and I hate to use the word lower, but it's just like the not as high ranked UCs, shall we say. If you take 1 to 3 exams, you're probably right there in the ballpark. Okay, right there in the ballpark. It doesn't mean you have to take them. That just means you're in the mix and competitive with other students. So lower UCs, quote unquote lower UCs, I would consider Merced, Riverside, and to a lesser degree, Santa Cruz. And my apologies in advance to anyone who graduated from there, or you have a brother or a sister or whoever went there. There's a school for everybody, but we got to categorize them somehow. Okay. So those 3 I would consider the lower UCs. Mid UCs, Davis and Irvine, 2 to 4 exams would be about typical. Upper mid UCs, I would say Santa Barbara and San Diego. These would be the upper mid ones, 4 or more exams. And then the top tier UCs, LA, UCLA, and Berkeley, 6 or more exams. Okay. And these are the number of suggested exams before senior year. Okay. So that's senior year is when you apply to college. Okay. So these are completed exams before you start senior year. Okay. All right. So with my recommendations here, it might be a little difficult to achieve some of those higher numbers. If you're, some of you may be fixated on the 6 or more. It may be hard to get 6 or more AP exams before senior year. If you only rely on AP courses that you're allowed to take in your high school, it may be very difficult to take that many. So it's quite common to take external courses. External courses means community college or perhaps an online accredited high school, like Elite offers. So Elite offers accredited AP classes for credit. We're fully WASC accredited courses that the UCs and the privates will acknowledge and count and recognize. We offer a unique blended learning model that has flexible self-paced learning schedule, as well as just enough human interaction for accountability and reinforcement. And again, these are fully accredited courses that will count towards your admissions GPA. They may not be part of your high school GPA because your high school may not accept them for credit. But remember, you don't need your high school to accept them. You just need the colleges to accept them. And as long as you submit the proper transcripts from your different sources, the colleges will recalculate your admissions GPA on their own. Okay. And one of the cool benefits and features of taking an Elite AP course is that we guarantee you a seat for the May AP exam, which very few other online high schools can offer. At a lot of other places, you take their course, but you're kind of on your own as far as registering and finding a place to take your AP exam in May. But through our vast network of resources, we're able to secure you and guarantee you a spot for the AP exam. Okay. So, word of caution to the parents and students here, as I was talking about before. Okay. So 2 slides ago, I gave you some recommendations on, how many APs to take, depending on which school you're applying to. Those are just recommendations. Those are not mandates. It's not always healthy or safe for your health and your own sanity to take that many APs sometimes. No statistic is carved in stone and is that rigid. Okay. Don't chase numbers just for the sake of achieving those numbers. You take an AP test because you're curious about that course and about that subject matter and you want to show mastery. But if you go chase numbers just for the sake of the accomplishment, not for the curiosity, I think, the truth comes out in its own ways when you write your personal statements. Okay. So one of my favorite mantras is quality, not quantity. So fewer but higher quality scores is better than the other way around. For instance, I'd rather you take only 3 to 4 AP exams, but you get all 4s and 5s, all high quality scores that are going to translate to some sort of college credit. That's better than taking 6 or 7 of them, but you got scattered 3s and 4s, maybe a couple of 5s here and there. But quality trumps quantity. Keep that in mind. Okay. All right. So let's do a case study here. I think everyone likes case studies. You like to see what happened with real life students. Okay. So these are actual students of mine whom I worked with in the past. These are actually both current seniors, so they're finishing high school pretty soon, and we worked with both of these students on our all through high school, whether it's test prep or tutoring for school, and we worked with both of them on their college essays as well. Okay, so one is a Cupertino High School soon-to-be alum, grad. These are his unweighted and weighted GPAs, 3.42 unweighted, 3.85 weighted. Okay, and I think everyone already knows unweighted, the max you can get is a 4.0. Weighted, in theory, the max you can get is a 5.0, but really, mathematically speaking, no one really can get that because you can't take everything honors and AP. Okay, so those are your weighted and unweighted GPAs. He scored 2 5s and 2 4s on his AP exams, and they were all in math and science. He's a pre-med major or aspiring pre-med student. So pre-med science major, so biochemistry, biochem, something like that. Lots of extracurricular activities, very rich profile for extracurriculars. He arranged his own shadowing and internship opportunity with a local doctor. I put that in because his parents did not obtain that for him. They didn't procure that for him. I'll spare you the long story on that, but he secured his own internship and shadowing opportunity with a local physician. He had a couple of different summer camps for science that weren't super high visibility or super selective, but they were interesting to him. So more importantly, they were meaningful to him. Okay? And he had extensive political activism work with local and regional communities. So I'll pause here for a few seconds, just let you kind of absorb and let this percolate in your mind a little bit. We got a 3.42, we got a 3.85. We got 4 AP exams, which I think, what does that put us? I think that puts us in the mid to upper mid UCs. Although those grades aren't quite there. And then we got the major and we got the extracurriculars. All right. So where did this young man get in? He was denied at all the UCs except for Merced. Every single UC denied him except for Merced. Merced took him. I beg your pardon, he was waitlisted at Riverside. Okay, so Riverside did waitlist him. Not exactly what he was hoping for, but I told him in advance, way early on, with 3 3.42 and 3.85. It's going to be an uphill battle trying to get into the UCs. Okay, so he's waitlisted at Riverside. However, he had some very interesting non-UC results. He got accepted at Purdue. Purdue is a top 50, top 55 nationally ranked university. He was waitlisted at NYU. NYU is like a top 35, top 40 school in America. These are really outstanding schools that are quite selective. And a wait list to me is almost as good. I know it doesn't seem like it to the parent, but it's almost as good as an acceptance, because it basically means you were good enough. You were qualified enough. We just don't have enough seats. We don't have enough dorm rooms for you. So we have to draw the line somewhere. Okay. So what made these schools like him that Riverside didn't take him? That, all those mid and upper mid UCs somehow turned him down. He got a 1520 on his SAT, and he only took it once, and he took it at the beginning of 12th grade. Okay. There's a lot of factors at play here, a lot of forces at play here. Purdue and NYU are both TO schools, test optional schools. The UCs are test blind. So the UCs took his 1520, but they covered it up. They were not allowed to look at it. Now, they probably saved it for other purposes, but the admissions readers were not allowed to consider or even look at or see the 1520. Purdue people saw it, NYU people saw it, and so the score definitely helped him. And he only took it once. When he took it doesn't really matter, but he only took it once. Taking it once doesn't create any ambiguity. It's like, well, it's not like he got a 1520 and then he took it again and got 1450. Then it makes them wonder, which one is the real version of this kid? Only once, and he did really well. Okay. And I remember this kid very distinctly in our boot camp class last summer. He worked his balls off because he was desperate to compensate for his lower GPA. So he put in his full effort. Okay. His college essays were good. They were disproportionately good relative to his GPA. Good college essays, which showed a lot of heart and a lot of sincerity, especially with all his political activism work. He had disproportionately high test scores. These factors all invited a more careful look at his overall high school GPA, high school profile. Okay. Something the UCs may have overlooked, I'm not sure. His grade trend was definitely improving after sophomore year. Again, I'm not going to share his personal business, but he had some mitigating factors that kind of distracted him freshman, sophomore year. Although freshman year doesn't matter for the UCs anyways. But his grade trend was definitely improving semester by semester, starting from junior year and on. Okay. His raw aggregate GPA numbers were not competitive in the eyes of the UC. But someone took a chance on him at Purdue and NYU. Probably because, well, the high test score invited a closer look. The UCs can be a little too GPA centric sometimes, could be. So he wasn't so competitive by their standards. Now, to be fair, the UCs do look at grade trend. But remember, last year, which would be his junior year, there was only one semester that counted. The first semester had grades, the second semester was credit, no credit. So there wasn't a whole lot of trend to look at. But the UCs in general can, now being test blind, can be a little too GPA centric. So in their eyes, he wasn't competitive enough. So kind of interesting how a 1520 student was able to get into Purdue and waitlisted at NYU, but denied at the vast majority of the UCs. Take a quick look at our time here. I've got just enough time to cover one more case study. All right, we have a local student here from Lynbrook High School, one of our popular South-based schools here. 3.29 and 3.76 for unweighted and weighted GPAs. He had 1 5 on his APs and he had 3 4s. So took 4 altogether, mostly in math and science again. Computer science major, not a shock, given that we're here in the middle of Silicon Valley. He was on the robotics team. He was a software lead / captain. Okay, so he wasn't the captain of the robotics team, but he was the lead on the software team. Okay, one of his interesting activities was he created his own app to track COVID infection rates in different counties across different states. different counties in different neighboring states on the West Coast. So I thought that was pretty interesting. In general, though, he did have very limited extracurricular involvement. He really just had robotics, and then he added that COVID app afterwards. But they were the few extracurriculars that he had, they were all focused on his selected major. Okay, so all the dots kind of connected towards his direction, his CS direction. All right, let's go back one more time. 3.29, 3.76, right? He took 4 APs. Where did he get in? He did not get admitted at any UC campus. Not a single one. He was waitlisted at Merced. Keep in mind, this is computer science. Whether you're at Merced or at Berkeley or anywhere in between, computer science is still computer science, so it's very competitive. So he was waitlisted at Merced. But he still had pretty decent results at non-UCs. He was accepted at University of Wisconsin, Madison. That's a top 50, top 55 school. Accepted at Texas A&M. That's probably a top 60, top 65 school. Penn State, very respectable engineering and CS program. That's probably like a top 50-ish school as well, 50 to 60. And he was waitlisted at Santa Clara, which is a strong regional school here in the South Bay, in the Bay Area. University of Maryland, which is a strong school as well. And my alma mater, UIUC. And remember, this is all for computer science. Strictly by the numbers, 3.29 and 3. Whatever I said before, 7 something. He's not really that competitive at these schools. So what got him in? Why would he be accepted at these top 15, top 20 engineering schools, but yet turned down at pretty much all the UCs? He got a 34 on his ACT. Took it just once, early junior year. This was before COVID hit, so I remember him as well from a couple years ago. Took the ACT boot camp, worked hard, and got it in September of his junior year, well before COVID hit. Okay, and only took it once. His essays weren't particularly fancy. They were relatively simple, but they were genuine. And they're looking for sincerity and genuineness more than anything else. And he had a strong test score as well. So all these 2 factors probably invited, it didn't overturn his 3.29, but it probably invited closer inspection. The non-UCs considered his ACT score. I don't know if the UCs caught this, but his math, science, and code-related, CS-related classes, he got all A's in those classes. All his B's were in other subjects: foreign language, history, social studies, English lit. I think he even got a B in like PE. Okay, well, PE doesn't count anyways. It's not an academic subject, but he literally got all B's, I think, in all his other subjects. But he got A's in the subjects that matter to him, his CS major eventually. Again, someone took a chance on him. Okay, you look at his profile on the surface and didn't look that impressive. The 34 turned some heads and go, I wonder if there's more to this kid than we think. Maybe we should dig a little deeper into his profile to make sure that we're making the right decision. Okay. All right, so digesting this all, what does all this mean? Well, to be fair, test scores can't radically boost your whole profile, right? I mean, you've got poor grades, you got poor grades. You know, a great SAT or ACT score isn't going to completely overturn that, even strong AP scores. But it can invite closer inspection and analysis of your achievements. Okay? It can show strength in an otherwise ho-hum profile. It adds another layer and dimension to your complex human portfolio of experiences. They can't boost your profile completely, but they can make a difference for the right students. What kind of student would be considered the right student? Well, someone whose transcript somehow doesn't capture their true ability. You know? Maybe your GPA is lower because of personal reasons. There's something happened in your personal life and you got distracted and you were able to focus. The test score serves as another data point to kind of offset that. Certain trends may not be captured by the overall GPA. Like we said, improving trends on your GPA from freshman to from sophomore to junior year, or maybe you got A's in your major subjects. You know, if you want to be more of a humanities and social science person, you may have gotten some B's in your math and science classes, and that brought down your GPA. But if they look at just the classes that matter to your major, you actually did quite well. Those trends are not captured by your aggregate GPA. Okay, those strengths can be brought up and clarified with a good test score. And I think that if you have the willingness to practice and grind and improve on these tests, that also might show untapped potential for college readiness. And so, I mean, not to say that if you do well on an exam, that automatically means that you're smart and you're going to do well in college. But if you're willing to grind and do well on an exam, you're probably willing to grind and do well in some other academic part of your life. And then also keep in mind that testing, for all its flaws, advantages, and disadvantages, it isn't for everybody. So if testing isn't your thing, don't overinvest yourself just to attain a score. Right? If you know that testing isn't your thing and you're not a, you're not a strong test taker, then maybe that's not the way to go for you. Follow your natural strengths. Okay. All right, that is it for my portion of it. How are we doing on time here? Oh, ran a little bit over. Got a little bit of time left over for Q&A. All right, so we'll spend about 10 minutes here answering some questions. All right, let's see what we got here. One of the questions is here. What if I take an AP class, does it look bad if I don't take the AP test? All right, that was one of the questions asked here. If I take an AP class, does it look bad if I don't take the AP test? Well, I may be at odds here with some counselors. The fair answer is it's always best if you take an AP class to take the AP test. It's always best to do that, clearly. Okay. But if you ask me, is taking the AP test more important or is taking the AP class more important? I think that you grinding and working through a year's worth of AP material, to me, shows more work and more diligence and more effort and more achievement than taking a three-hour AP exam. So I would say that the GPA benefit and the work, the benefit of seeing a whole year's worth of work in an AP class, the class has more value than the test itself. But to directly answer your question, if I take an AP class, does it look bad to not take the AP test? It could look bad. It could indicate that maybe you knew that your teacher was not so strong and you got an A, but oddly enough, you didn't take the test. So you were afraid to take the test. Or you're just afraid to show a bad grade on the AP test. So it's better if you take it. But if you want to protect yourself, I'm okay if you don't. Okay. Let's answer another question here. What is considered a good ACT score? All right, well, I think that's going to vary depending on what kind of colleges you're applying to and what kind of major you're applying to as well. But for ACT, I would say around a 30 and above is usually going to reap some benefits for you. 29, 30 and above will reap some benefits. Of course, the higher you go, the more benefits that you get. Okay. All right, we got some more questions here. Let's see here. You use the term AP exam during the slide. Does it make a difference if someone takes an AP course and gets a B or an A in that course in school, but does not give the AP exam? And if so, will it be considered as taking an AP? I'm sorry, I need to read the whole thing again. You use the term AP exam during the slide. Does it make sense? Does it make a difference if someone takes an AP course, gets a B or an A in that course at school, but does not give the AP exam? And if so, will it be considered as taking an AP without giving an AP exam? I think that kind of goes back to the other question. Yes, it will be still considered as, it will still be considered as having taken an AP class. You don't have to get a GPA boost from the exam. The exam shows proficiency, and potential college credit. Taking the course gives you the GPA boost and the rigor. Okay. Let me make sure I don't run too over here. All right, I can do about 5 more minutes here. Okay, let's see what other questions we have here. Hello, do colleges prefer to see a weighted or unweighted GPA? Great question. Both. I don't think they have a preference. It's not that one is more important than the other. They both matter. Because weighted, as you know, has its flaws, right? Someone can have a 4.0, but it's based on a bunch of easy classes and remedial classes. The weighted, so then that may not bring in the full effect of how difficult your schedule was. But that's for unweighted GPA. But a weighted GPA takes into consideration how hard and how rigorous your schedule was. So they both matter. I can't even distinguish which one is more important. I think they both matter. They both matter equally. All right, let's see here. Try to get as many questions as I can, reasonably so. Does taking a certain number of AP classes means having taken the course or having taken the AP exam? Oh yes, what I said before. I meant taking the exam, not taking the course, taking the exam. Okay. In the context of test optional, what is the cutoff score that you would recommend before submitting it or not? Yeah, that's a really good question. That's a very subjective call. I don't think I can answer that cleanly. I think it depends on your GPA, because the truthful answer to that is you want to score. If someone's going to ask that, that probably means that they have a lower-ish GPA, a lower GPA than they prefer. So they're wondering, how good of a score do I need to make it beneficial for me? So along those lines, then, you want a score that's high enough to somewhat offset your GPA. That's what you want. You want something that's going to inject just enough doubt in their minds, like, 3.29? But the guy got a 34, or that girl got a 1510, or even a 1480. That's much higher than a 3.29 GPA. Maybe we should take a closer look at this kid. So I don't know there's a cutoff score. Can't give you that number. It would depend on the context. Okay. All right, a couple more minutes here. Someone asked, is it that useful for AP courses taken in 12th grade? Oh, yes. Absolutely. Is it useful to take AP courses taken in 12th grade? Even though the AP scores may not count towards your admissions, it will show the willingness to take on rigor in your senior year. Even though you know it doesn't count towards your admissions GPA, your willingness to invest your time and your effort into it shows that you're willing to grind and to work. Okay, so yes, it is definitely useful to take courses AP courses senior year. What is considered a good SAT score? Same thing. Depends on your situation. Someone asked, if I took the SAT more than one time, is that considered a disadvantage? Well, this is kind of a subjective opinion depending on the counselor. Remember, I emphasized it a couple times, with the 2 case studies. Both of those students took the test only once. Once is ideal. I think twice is probably okay. My subjective evaluation, if you take it more than twice, you're starting to tiptoe on maybe too many times. Starting to look a little bit too test heavy, too test centric, a little desperate almost. So I say once is great, twice is probably okay. Try not to take it more than twice. That's my opinion. Other counselors may differ, but that's my opinion. I think I can take 2 more questions here because we have 60 questions overall. Let's see. What are some highly ranked? No, I can't answer that one neatly and cleanly here. If I have a 1300 SAT score, should I do SAT optional for top 20 schools? Well, if you have a 1300, 1300 is well above national average. The national average is around 1100. If you got a 1300, you're above national. But if you're looking at top 20 schools, probably not so competitive. So should I do SAT optional? Yeah, I would say if you're trying to get into a top 20 school, I would say do not submit your SAT. You've got 1300. Yeah, that's probably not going to be high enough where it's going to be beneficial to you. I think I'm going to answer one more question here. Scroll through my many that I have available at my disposal. If I take calculus AB honor, well, okay, I'll answer that one. If I took calculus AB honors in 10th grade and I'm taking AP calculus AB in the following year, would it look bad? I think that depends on the context. If you're retaking it, it probably means that you didn't do so well the first time. I don't think it looks bad. If you're taking it again because you want to improve on your less than optimal grade before, I don't think it'll look bad because it shows that you're trying to legitimately show mastery in that subject matter. But I don't think your school will allow you to retake it unless you got a D or an F. Let me answer one more question here. All right, this will be the last question I answer before I end it for the evening. Don't want to make it too late for everybody. How do extracurriculars compare to AP courses? That's a good question. I wish I can give you hard percentages and hard guidelines. And that's the thing that's bewildering and almost maddening about American college admissions. They're not set percentages. They're not set boundaries. I wish I can tell you with certainty, with absolute certainty, this percentage of their consideration is for GPA. This percentage of their consideration is for extracurriculars. This percentage is for test scores. Well, actually, they're optional, is for AP courses and AP tests. This percentage is for leadership, whatever like that. It's just not done that way. And remember, it's a human being who makes these determinations. And human beings can be swayed. They can be persuaded. They create impressions. So when they hear your voice in an interview, they read your words in an essay, their impressions can be altered, okay, depending on the human story that you bring to the surface. So when you ask, how do extracurriculars compare to AP courses? I think if you put a gun to my head and said you have to choose which one is more important, I'd say the AP courses are probably still a little bit more important. Taking the right number that's appropriate for you, the right number of AP courses and doing well in them probably matters more than extracurriculars. Because after all, getting into college is an academic endeavor. So I think the quality and quantity and performance in your AP courses probably still does matter more than your extracurriculars. But in this test optional day and age, I think extracurriculars probably are not too far behind. Okay. Last question. I'm going to answer one more just because it's a quickie and I think it's an important one. Last one, I promise, Jason. Are the APs taken, when you say APs, I'm assuming AP classes. AP classes taken in the summer before senior year outside of your school counted for the UCs? Yes, they are. All classes taken through and including the summer before senior year will count towards your college admissions. So if you have, so this summer, if you're about to be a senior, this summer is the final academic term that will count towards your admissions profile. So this is the summer to give it a last boost. Okay. I think we are out of time. I think that's it on my part.
Yes, thank you so much for that incredibly helpful and useful information, Mr. Moy. Much appreciated. And as June said, we got a lot of questions that Mr. Moy wasn't able to answer. So here's what you do. If we didn't get to your question, take that question, type it in an email right now. Send it to your local elite branch director or counselor. If you're not enrolled at Elite or if you haven't taken classes there, just go to eliteprep.com or eliteprep.com/locations. Find your local Elite branch. Our branch directors and counselors would love to answer your question. Just set up a free consultation and we'll get those questions answered for you. Also, as Mr. Moy mentioned, we have a variety of extremely exciting programs for students in grades all the way from grades 5 through 12 this summer, starting in June, both online and in-person options available. We've got AP courses for credit, dual credit college courses, and Korean language courses, all with tutoring and support from Elite. If you want to raise your GPA significantly and add rigorous classes to your transcript, for students who are looking to add some impressive extracurricular activities that they can brag about on their college applications, we've got an incredible selection of fun and exciting extracurricular activities and workshops happening this summer, and they're all online, available to students everywhere. Of course, we have our world famous SAT and ACT boot camps. If you are applying to those test optional or test required schools, basically anywhere but the UCs, we would recommend taking one of those tests. Set up a free diagnostic test and consultation right now, again, also at eliteprep.com. And finally, if you're a rising senior looking for help on college applications or help with essays or compiling your high school resume, putting your best foot forward on your applications, we've got college application service packages available for UCs, Common App, and private schools. So if you're looking for some help getting through this time, let us know what we can do for you. We have everything you need to get into the college of your dreams, whether you're in grade 6 or 11. The time to start college prep is right now. So contact your local Elite location to set up a free diagnostic test and consultation. That's all the time we have for today's webinar. Thanks again, Mr. Moy. Stay safe, everyone, and we'll see you next week.